So if you are burned out and you are finally ready to leave that corporate gig behind, that soul-sucking, grinding feeling of having someone tell you where to be, when to be there all the time, not feeling like you have enough time with your family or for your health or all the things that matter to you, I want to just say I totally feel you. I was there. And what I want to share in this video is 3 specific deals, 3 specific short-term rentals that I think if you own these 3 rental properties, they could take you from a place where you're at right now, totally burned out, not making any extra income, to a place of replacing your full-time job with just 3 specific types of deals. And I like to go over specific deals because a lot of people think today you can't do this anymore, that it's not possible. But there are incredible deals out there that people are doing today. And 2 of these deals are being done by people I work with, members of my first vacation rental investment program, and they are fantastic deals. And one of them we just finished up several months ago, and it has just been booked up like crazy and producing really high cash flow. So I'm going to walk you through these 3 specific deals that are in 3 different parts of the country, but they all have similar attributes that add up to really high cash flow. All right, so diving right into property number 1, which is located just on the outskirts of Cincinnati. Just to recap, these are 3 different properties that I'm going to go over in 3 different parts of the United States. And these are all deals that are either they've been purchased this year or they're going to be purchased this year. These aren't deals from like 5 years ago. And the cumulative total of cash flow is going to be right around $11,000 from these 3 deals. So if you were able to just replicate any one of these deals a few different times, you're talking about life-changing cash flow for most people. It's enough cash flow to leave your full-time job. Let's dive in and look at the details of these properties. This first one was found and was already rehabbed. It's in the process of just being refinanced and put on Airbnb, but it was found by a person in my first vacation rental investment blueprint. You can see it's just on the outskirts of downtown Cincinnati, which is a perfect type of location for this strategy. Here's what the listing looked like when he purchased it. He purchased it off market. It was a 2-unit property that he turned into a 3-unit property. So again, having multiple units in this type of deal really increases the cash flow. So adding that third unit really juiced his cash flow. So from a process standpoint, what I always like to do is look at the AirDNA information for an area. Within Cincinnati, there's the submarket of downtown Cincinnati, which this property falls within. And you can see the average occupancy rate is 49%. The average daily rate is 205. And that's across 1,329 active short-term rentals. I don't look at this and say, okay, I can expect to get $200 a night 49% of the year, because this is just average across a lot of different types of properties. But what I'm looking for is there potential in this market? You know, at these numbers, if you were to buy a property for what he bought this property for, or what properties are going for in this area compared to the occupancy and nightly rate, is that a favorable differential? And it is in this market. It's a very affordable market and relatively, decent average income. So from there, I go to Airbnb itself, put in the actual address, and here's where the address is. And then there's quite a few comps right down here. So I'm looking at the comparable properties in the area to see what are they booking for? What can I expect in terms of nightly rate? So there's obviously this one host has a lot of properties in the area, this vintage vibe, and these are not super updated. They play on the fact or turn the vintage aspect into a positive, even though they're pretty outdated properties. So I pulled up a bunch of these because these are a lot of the comps in the area, and you can see it's like kind of looks like grandma's house inside. It's got a vintage look. It's a little bit outdated, but some people like that. So, and it's performed really well. 4.93 star rating after 42 reviews. So at this price point, and you can look in different seasons to see what the average price point is across several different comps. Are they booked at that price point? So in the upcoming few weeks, do they have some bookings on the calendar, which you can see this one does, and then read through all the reviews to see what do people like about this property. When did they stay? This one was 1 day ago. This was 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, August. So you can see how many times per month people are staying at the property and start to judge an average occupancy as well. So you do that across lots of different comps and come back to the numbers, and this is what the numbers look like. So this person bought this property for $145,000. The after repair value, he thinks very conservatively, he's still waiting on the appraisal to come back now that he's done with the rehab and is in the process of refinancing, but he thinks conservatively it'll be around $280,000. and he thinks it'll probably be higher than that. But we use the most conservative numbers here. Here's property taxes, insurance. He put about $65,000 into rehabbing this property, and then his furnishing costs were around $15,000 because they're pretty small units. Loan to value percentage for his initial loan. This is all the information for the initial financing here. Then you got to put in the average nightly rate and average occupancy. So one of them is a 2-bedroom, two of them are 1-bedroom units. So one of them is going to be a little bit higher. So in the high season, 175, 160, 160, low season, 135, 110, 110, and you can see what that averages out to. So not a super high average nightly rate on any one unit, but when you add up 3 units together, that turns into a pretty sizable number. At 57% occupancy, which I think is very achievable. So you're looking at almost $100,000 plus you add in your cleaning fees. So you're at $108,000 gross, and then you put in all your expenses here. So he's got about $5,200 worth of expenses, but he's refinancing so that the loan number will change. So then we go to the refinance calculations, and we can see, okay, if it's worth $280 at the end, and his new loan is $210 at 7.5% interest rate, you can see his new payment is $1,500 a month on this property. His total income is going to be about $9,000, and his expenses will be about $4,300 based off of all the information that we put in and his new payment. So he's looking at $4,700 of monthly net income on this property. And after the refinance, he's going to leave about $28,500 into the deal. After all the money he's put into it between the purchase, the rehab, the furnishings, the closing costs, all of it, he's able to pull out all except for $28,500. So on that money, his cash on cash return is 200%. So that means because of the income that it's bringing in, he's making a 200% return annually on this $28,500. All around, this is just a fantastic deal. I always recommend targeting a 1% net rule. So whatever you have into the deal, you should try to make 1% net on a monthly basis from your cash flow. He's at closer to 2% net with this deal, or just over 2%. So just a phenomenal deal. So this is the type of deal that can work really well. So this one's in Cincinnati. Now let's move on to the next one. So here's another one that a member of our program is finding or just found recently, and it is in the process of purchasing. So this one's in Cuba City, or just outside of Cuba City, Wisconsin, which is not too far from Dubuque, Iowa / Wisconsin. You know, it's right on the border of Iowa and Wisconsin. So that's what I kind of recommend, is like just outside of these larger cities is where this can work really well. Now, this is a little bit more of a remote area, so you really want to look at the comps to make sure that the numbers work. So this is what the listing looks like. So initially I thought, you know, there's probably going to be a ton of work that needs to be done. I wasn't sure about this barn, but actually the barn has been turned into a residential unit already, which is huge because that means all of the mechanicals have already been set up. There's water to it, there's electric, there's, you know, gas, there's all the things that you would need because it's already a residential unit. That means it's more cosmetic than a huge gut rehab where you have to run all those utilities and it gets to be really expensive. So that's already done. Somebody is currently living there. And then the residential unit was an inherited property. The actual house itself, very outdated, but again, it's set up as a separate residential unit. So you're essentially buying 2 properties in one for $89,000, which is just phenomenal. Plus it has a 2-car garage that comes with it as well. It's right on this river. So there's a ton of benefits to this property. And after I got the pictures, because he did a walkthrough and got the pictures over, because there weren't any pictures on the listing, I was just pleasantly surprised with how ready to go it already is. Now you're going to have to replace all the cosmetic stuff, but these are the types of properties that are set up really well to just phenomenally cash flow because there's 2 units in one. So when you look at the performance of this sub-market, it's called Mineral Point, which is where this property is located, 45% occupancy, 190 average daily rate with 111 active listings in the area. So from there, then I go to Airbnb and put in the address. And ideally what you want to see is you want to see a lot of comps right around the property to come up with your average nightly rate and occupancy. But in more remote areas, you're probably not going to see as many. And so you go out a little bit further and you can look at these. And so what I'm looking for is the ones that do exist, are there a bunch of bookings? Or is it like just a few bookings, they've been listed for a few years and it's few and far between? If that's the case, you know it's going to be a struggle to get guests. But if there's multiple bookings a month consistently over time, you know that there's a draw for that area. So I was really pleasantly surprised when I see stuff like this where it's 4.94 star listing after 200 reviews. Here's 4.93 after 28 reviews. Well, this one's a newer listing. It's a massive cabin, but here's one 4.97 after 86 reviews. So there are some draws. And then when you look at these comps, you can see that there's not a gap in, there's not a huge gap in terms of in between guests. And even in the off season, there's consistent booking. So that's a really good sign when you're running your numbers to know that you can expect similar results. And the bar isn't set super high in terms of competition. This one doesn't even have indoor plumbing, and they're still getting on average over $100 a night. So going to the numbers on this one, $89,000 purchase, $200,000 rehab. So because it's two separate buildings, and you're doing a pretty significant rehab on them. So after repair values, $200,000, $90,000 is the repair cost. It's not going to take anywhere close to $200,000. It probably right around $90,000 is what the repair costs are going to be. Property taxes on this one, I think were around $1,500. Annual insurance should be about the same. Furnishing costs $25,000. On the income and expense side of things, for the larger of the two units, it's going to be an average of $200 in the summertime, and then in the off season or the winter time, it's going to be average of $135, and then $150 and $100 for the other unit. And you can see that he's anticipating a 70% occupancy rate during the high season. So 30% of the time it will be vacant. And then in the off season, he's anticipating 60% of the time. So over half the off season will sit vacant. And these numbers still ink out this way. So he's going to have about $75,000 gross between the nightly rate and the cleaning fees. And then he puts in his other fees here, his other expenses. Then we go to the refinance tab. So if the after repair value is $200, which again, I think is super conservative, and he gets a 30-year note at 7.5, or his new income, $6,250. His expenses are $3,600. And so the monthly cash flow on this property is going to be $2,600. So a property that you've got less than $200,000 invested into is going to cash flow $2,600 net after all your expenses on a monthly basis. And that's because it's got two units and he bought it so cheaply. So another great property. And so finally, the third property is one that I am in the process of finishing up the rehab on. And this one's located in Michigan City, Indiana. So this is not too far from where we live, and it's about an hour outside of Chicago. And when you zoom in, you can see that it's right downtown Michigan City next to a lot of different attractions. So this is what I recommend, within driving distance to a major city, and then has some local attractions. So, this is right next to this big outlet mall right here. The beach, obviously, like Michigan Beach, there's lots of like boat tours and stuff like that. There's a zoo here. There's a casino here. There's wineries. So there's lots of stuff that will draw people in addition to just having a decent population where there's going to be weddings, funerals, and all the utilitarian reasons people travel. So from there, we look at the listing itself. You can see this was an ugly house when we bought it. What attracted me to it is that it's two units. And it's got a lot of square footage, so we could do a lot with it. And it had this big empty, this is just one part of the attic. And so we are in the process of transforming this almost 1,300 square foot attic into a whole extra finished space where we're gonna have games, we're gonna have an extra bathroom, extra sleeping area. There's a lot of upside potential with this, even though it is a huge rehab, and we're just finishing up that rehab right now. So looking at the AirDNA, 49% occupancy rate, 416 average daily rate. And this is skewed up a little bit. Looking at this, you're like, wow, that's a high average daily rate for Indiana. There's some lakefront properties that command a really high nightly rate. And so it skews that average daily rate up a little bit. But we're downtown, so I know that it's going to be a little bit less where we are. So then I look at Airbnb itself, and you can pull it up and you can see there's lots of comps right nearby. And so a lot of these are right in that $150 price range. This one's a brand new one, a little bit cheaper, but these have a lot of reviews. This one's 119 reviews, 4.94 stars. This one's 28 reviews, 4.96 stars, 112 reviews, 4.99 stars. And these are all 2-bedroom, 1-bath apartments, similar to our lower level apartment. Our upper level one's more like a 4.2. So with that loft, I know there's going to be even more value there. So I look at each one of these and go through, and it's amazing because the pricing on these, people just do not understand how to price. I just did a video on pricing strategy, but a lot of people have the exact same price every night, which leaves a ton of money on the table. All of these are that way, right around $150 per night. You can watch my other videos on pricing strategy, but I have quite a few other properties in this area, so I really know pricing well for this area. So here's what the numbers look like. So $145,000 is what I bought the property for. $420 is what I anticipate the after repair value, the appraisal, to be once we refinance. The taxes are $946. Annual insurance is $1,600. And then repair costs are going to be right around $200,000 is what we're putting into it. We're going to furnish it with about $30,000. And so then on the income and expense side of things, in the high season, we're going to get about $250 and $225. In the low season, $150 and $120. You can see 80% in the high season, 40% occupancy in the low season. So an average of 60%. So we're going to bring in just over $100,000 annually on this property. And so when we refinance it then, after the rehab's all finished in next month, we're going to be refinancing it. The appraisal should come in right around $420. So the bank will give us $315 at 7.5% interest. And so we're going to leave about $65,000 into this deal, but on a monthly basis, it will generate $8,689, and our monthly expenses will be $49.82. So this number will be quite a bit higher in the summertime. It'll be lower in the wintertime, but it'll average this on a monthly basis, which means we will average net income $3,700 per month. So again, looking at the 1% rule, we're all into this deal for, our all in is 145 plus 200 basically. So about 350, and our net monthly cash flow is $3,700. So we're just over that 1% net rule, and we're making 67% return on every dollar that we left into this deal. That's what the cash on cash return is. So look, I love sharing specific examples of deals like this with you because I don't think people understand how close you actually are to being able to leave your full-time job and replace your income with cash flow like this. These are deals people are doing today. These are people I work with in our First Vacation Rental Investment Blueprint program. So if you're interested in that program, you want to talk to me about whether it's a good fit for your goals, you can set up a call with me at livingoffrentals.com/call, and we can discuss your goals. And I can share a little bit about the program, how it works. And I personally work with every single person who's a part of that program. And so we can see if it's a good fit. So go to that link, set up a call with me. Thank you for joining me for this video. God bless, and I'll see you in the next video.